Delighted to welcome back Dame Esther Ranson, who says we shouldn't have any reservations about booster jabs, and Cheryl Baker, who believes firmly that freedom should never be conditional. Esther Ranson, isn't that the point, right? Why can't we trust the over 60s to make a decision that's right for them, given that vaccine take-up in this country has been amongst the highest in the world?
We are very sensible, we over 65s, there's no
You
question.
are.
I've had 3 jabs, and with alacrity, and I regard it as a real privilege. I think the problem with this virus is that it's incredibly sexist and racist and ageist. I mean, people are going down like 9 pins, aren't they? Still. I mean, the numbers are still enormously high.
Cases.
And people like me, you see, if I got this horrible disease, I'm likely to take up really crucial space in ICU, which I don't want. Today's news about the health service right now was really quite tragic because the ambulances are unable to unload their patients, desperately sick patients, because there aren't the hospital beds. The NHS staff is already exhausted, and this is only November. So what I feel is, if we oldies are prepared to say, OK, if I get COVID, I won't take any resources of the NHS, I shall stay at home and fall off my perch here, then OK, you have the right to say you refuse all medical help, be it a vaccine or be it the ICU.
But that's not the sort of society we want.
If you expect nurses and doctors to look after you, you must protect them, and you must make sure they can prioritise people. And
so you would want to ban the unjabbed from being able to access health services?
No, I'm saying you've got to make that decision yourself. It's your choice. If you decide that you don't want a vaccine or a booster, then you can decide not to go to hospital however ill you get. And that is your right.
So you would leave the unjabbed at home to die if they had a heart attack, if they suffered from a stroke?
That's their choice. If they're unjabbed, if they take the decision they're not going to use the medical evidence, follow the science, as we say, recognise, because what the boosters do is not only protect you, they protect other people because you transmit the infection far less.
Yeah. Although you can still transmit even if you are triple jabbed. Cheryl Baker, isn't the point that this is a free country and one of the fundamental principles is that we have control over our own bodies and what we choose to put in our bodies?
Absolutely. I think that I've had 2 jabs and next week I'm having my booster, so I'm not in disagreement with it. I do think that it's a great thing. However, I know lots of people of my age and older who have been quite poorly since they've had the booster. In fact, very poorly since they've had the booster, and it's putting some people off. And I don't think it's right that they have, that they're having their liberty taken away from them. At first, we were all told you've got to have a jab, and then we were told you've got to have another jab, and we all did it. We all did it because we knew it was the right thing to do. And then suddenly, now you've got to have a booster as well. It wasn't you've got to, it was suggested. However, France and other countries are saying if you don't have a booster, you can't come to our country.
Well, and we could see from Sajid Javid where it was heading. And that's the point, isn't it, Dame Esther Ranson? I mean, do you start mandating flu jabs?
Well, sometimes you do. I mean, I've got a friend who's a surgeon, and he's not allowed to practice if he doesn't have a hepatitis C vaccination. It's obligatory. There are people who are put at risk if we carry the infection with us. And in Israel, the evidence really is that if you have the booster, not only does it boost your own immunity, but it does stop you transmitting the illness. So we owe it. We owe it to the most vulnerable. There are people, people with underlying health issues who cannot have vaccines of any kind, people who are already have their immune systems compromised. We need to protect them. We need to protect all the vulnerable. And the way we do that is to do what Cheryl and I have done, which is have 1, 2, 3 boosters. And if next year I have to have a COVID vaccine alongside my flu vaccine, vaccine, I shall be there in the queue.
But don't you understand, Esther, though, that coercion and mandates actually has the opposite effect of what you're hoping to happen? Because the people who are vaccine hesitant but want to make their own decision, as soon as they see this concept of government coercion, in fact, studies have shown it makes them even less likely to be jabbed.
Well, it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how you persuade people who believe conspiracy theories and would rather believe, something they read on Facebook rather than something that the medical scientists tell us. I can't explain that, except that I wouldn't take their advice about anything. I wouldn't follow their example about anything. And I say, if that's the way they feel, then they must also take the decision that if they fall ill, they won't ask the NHS to look after them, because
I find, Cheryl,
NHS advice.
Cheryl, I find this so disturbing. I mean, we saw it with Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, when she was asked by a journalist, "You're creating a two-tier society," and she said, yes, that's what we're doing. And I can't believe that we've allowed COVID to change our society so fundamentally. It makes me sad and worried and angry on a daily basis.
I totally agree. And actually, when you said I'm going to be Cheryl Baker and Esther Ranson, I thought, oh, Esther scares me. And you do scare me, Esther. But
you don't mess with Dame Esther.
I think there has to be, we have to still have the ability to say no. And actually, I think it's a bit far-fetched to say that if you don't have the jab, then you can die at home. I think that's a bit cruel, Esther. That's all I'm saying.
Esther, how do you want to respond to that? You're being too cruel.
Listen, all I'm saying to you is that you've got to be consistent. If you say that you need the NHS, you need the doctors and nurses who are giving you this advice at the moment, then take their advice. I mean, it's not pick and mix. If you're going to say that these are the doctors that understand the right medication, when you're lying in ICU, you're not given the choice of whether or not you lie on your back or your front. They will do what's best for you. If you accept that, then you ought to accept their advice and take the jab. I've had 3 jabs and I wasn't poorly at all, but I did feel privileged. If we think about the people in the world who can't get a single jab, that's a different argument. Should we be having 3 jabs when there are people in Africa who haven't had one?
Well, exactly.
I think there's merit in that argument. But while we've got the opportunity, Cheryl and I promise I won't attack you in the queue, Cheryl, even if you're ahead of me.
Well, I'm glad we've had a happy ending. Both legends are in my book. That's journalist and TV presenter Dame Esther Ranson and the singer and TV presenter Cheryl Baker. So who do you agree with? Sharon, via Twitter, says, "It's wrong to threaten anyone's freedom of choice. I'm vaccinated, but totally support those who choose not to." Justina on Twitter says, "It's wrong to advertise vaccines as the path to freedom, but forget to mention that people will need to take this vaccine over and over or their freedom is removed. All of it is wrong." And Rebecca, via Dare Dan, says, "Creating an underclass now gives far too much power to strip further liberties in future. Segregation should be left behind in the previous century, not a free society." And your verdict is now in. 84% of you agree that it's wrong to threaten to remove the freedoms of over 65 booster refusers. So you're with Cheryl Baker on me on that, while 16% of you say no. Fascinating stuff. Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.